What's going on, everybody? My name is Blitzwinger, and ladies and gents, I am joined by the one and only Blitzbot right here for a brand new series right here on the channel, and I hope that you guys will enjoy it. So this is Lego Recipe, where basically what we're going to do is go on ahead and walk through a particular custom of a certain character that does not appear in a specific LEGO game. So in this case, of course, we are playing LEGO Marvel Superheroes 2, where there are a lot of characters actually missing from this game. A lot of characters that you would think would appear here do not appear in the game. So for example, characters like the Fantastic Four, most of the X-Men are not here, especially the iconic ones, I would say. Of course, characters like even Thanos is not in the game. At least at the time of this recording, he's still not in the game. So that is obviously quite disappointing in some regards, but the wonderful thing is that this game has afforded us with a really great customizer. Prior to this, most of the LEGO customizers, they were, I would say, mediocre. Now, this is a really good customizer. Now, of course, ideally in the future, this will move on to being great, and hopefully that will be the future iterations of the customizer. But for now, ladies and gents, we're going to go on ahead and begin with our very first recipe of the day, and that will be, of course, for the one and only Deadpool. So, of course, he is a really popular character, and a character that many people wish was in the game, especially because he did appear in LEGO Marvel Superheroes 1. He was not a member of LEGO Marvel Avengers, which was interesting as well, but he has appeared in LEGO Marvel Superheroes, the first game. The second one, unfortunately, he was not a member of, so that was definitely quite disappointing. Nevertheless, though, today we're going to go on ahead and create the secondary version of him, or try to do our best to create a version of him. Now, of course, the other really cool thing that the LEGO Marvel Superheroes 2 game has done lately is that it has gone ahead and added a lot of customization pieces from all the DLC characters that we've been getting. So, for example, Daredevil Noir was not a character that you could get in the core game. You had to purchase the DLC packs. And of course, if you did that, you would get Daredevil Noir. And now, you can go on ahead and use those pieces for your own customs, which is super duper cool. So I think that that is, in and of itself, is a really cool element. Like, for example, check that out. There's a Nova helmet that now you can utilize, which, again, super duper cool that they are adding more and more parts and pieces for us to use in the game. So with that in mind, of course, there are many different options in the game as far as different headpieces, some of which unfortunately you cannot change colors of. So for example, something like this would work excellently for a Deadpool custom. If we could get rid of that spider logo, and if we could go on ahead and change the head color to be red, heck, even if we could just change the head color to be red, it would look pretty good for a Deadpool custom. Unfortunately, we can't do that, so we have to keep looking to heads like these ones, for example, where they have that little circle with basically all the colors of the rainbow on there. And you could go on ahead and then select different colors to change the headpiece to whatever color you find appropriate. So with that in mind, there are several options that we can look to for a Deadpool head. Even though I said that that option up at the top is would have probably been my favorite and the best option overall, I would say that there are still several options that we could look to. So for example, a very popular option is this one right here, and I've seen a lot of people utilize this particular headpiece for Deadpool, and it's a good option because I really do think it looks good and it works. I just don't particularly care for the lines coming across the eyes there, because I just think it kind of looks a little weird and stands out quite a bit more than I would like it to. So for me personally, it is not a look that I go for. I personally would far better and much rather go on ahead and choose the options down below over here. Now, of course, another option that has lately been popular is this one right here. So what people do is they choose this, and then they would cover up the face with like a bandana or something like that to give it a unique look and a unique feel, because a lot of people like the sculpture and the idea of that face. So that's a good option as well. Another popular option is this one right here, which is the Phantom Rider. But for me personally, my favorite option is actually this head right here. And in addition to that one, I also like this option over here. Personally, I think that this one's a bit better because it's got the outlines around the eyes, like the stroke around the eyeballs, whereas if you look at this one, even if I change the color, it doesn't. So you can see it's just plain white, which it looks cool, but for me personally, I much rather use this option over here because I think it looks better. So we're going to use that for our headpiece. Then from there, of course, we still have several options that we could work in. And again, this is a recipe that I'm going for, but you don't have to follow it word for word. Obviously, just like if you were to follow a recipe to cook something, you could always add your own spices and your own elements into the equation in order to make it your own and personalized. But basically, you can go on ahead and make the character feel a bit more 90s inspired by adding a few more attachments to him, because way back in the 90s, or way back in the 90s, well, I guess it has been a long time since the 90s were around, but basically, back then, he had a lot more stuff on him. Like, he had pouches, and he had little bags and buckles, and so on and so forth. And that's something that you can go on ahead and add with some elements like this. So if you're like, hey, I want to give him shoulder pads, or I want to give him a helmet, or something like that, you can do that, which is really cool. And it's definitely quite neat. For me personally, though, I really don't particularly care for any of the options here. If I were to use any of them at all, it would probably be this one, just because I think it kind of looks cool with the red. So it would be something that I would incorporate. But for the sake of this particular design, we're going to avoid that altogether. The only thing I would have considered to do is something like this, but for katana swords. So if there was a holster for swords that you could sheath into the back of the character, that would have been awesome. Unfortunately, there's nothing like that here. So because of that, we're just going to skip this option altogether. So with that all in mind, let's go on ahead and hit the big red X and move along. Oh, final thing I will address. Some people might want to use helmets. There really aren't any, in my opinion at least, there aren't really any helmets that work for Deadpool. You could try to make some things work a bit better. Like maybe if you want, you could use like a cap like this to just like make it feel a little bit more unique and a bit more Deadpool-esque, I guess. Maybe you want to use the egghead design for like a funny look and stuff like that. Maybe some people would like to do something like this. For me personally, I'd rather not use any of the head pieces or helmet pieces and just keep it just as a plain head, because I think that that looks the best for the particular look that we're going for. So from there, let's go on ahead and move on to the hands, which is a pretty simple process. All we want to do is either change them to red or black. It's up to you. But for me personally, I'm going to go with black for this particular design. Then we go to the most important part, which is the torso or the body, because of course this is one of those things that is going to make or break the design, because if you pick a bad torso, it's really going to make the rest of the design look terrible. And it's interesting how you'd think that the torso is the most important part, and I think to an extent it probably is, but there are parts like the hip pieces. If you get those wrong, the character looks terrible, and it really is true. So basically, I would say for me, or from my perspective, there really are two torsos that I think look best for Deadpool custom. But of course, you could make the argument, like I know a lot of people like this one down here actually, which is the Warmond skin. So a lot of people like this torso because it's got red and black, which is kind of the predominant colors that you want to feature on Deadpool. And that makes sense. I think that's a pretty good option, and I think that it's a decent option if you're going for like a more X-Force inspired Deadpool or something like that, you know, where you're not just doing a traditional all or mostly red Deadpool costume. That could work as well. So I think that that's a pretty solid option, all things considered. Another option that I actually really like is this one right here, Kraglin, who's one of the DLC characters. I think it looks cool because, again, he's got the buckles and the pouches and everything. So that works pretty well as well for the Deadpool design side of things. But my personal favorite is actually this one right here, which is the Gorgon design. And the reason why I like this one is because it's pretty simple, but it still has the belt buckles going across and everything. So I think that that one looks really nice. And I personally am a big fan of the way that that one turns out. You could maybe try to do like a fancy Deadpool with like Captain Corbett, because again, Deadpool has rocked many different looks and designs. And finally, the last one I wanted to bring up as an option is this one right here, which is the Ant-Man classic look. And also, again, those look pretty cool. It's got the belt design going across and everything. But I'm going to go on ahead and stick with the Gorgon look just because that's the one that I personally lean towards as the best option. Because if we were to look at Gwenpool, for example, like if we could obviously repaint that red, make it a male torso and everything like that, it would work perfectly for a Deadpool design. Unfortunately, we can't do that, so I feel like Gorgon is about as close as we can get to that look without completely, you know, making it look weird and odd and different than what we're going for. All right, so on the arms side of things, we have actually several different options, which is kind of interesting because I personally really like these ones right here, the Adam Warlock, because I like to add a little bit of black into the arms, and this does exactly that. It has black, it has red, and it works fantastically well. You can go on ahead and scroll down and find different designs that are more like red dominant, or maybe you want like a pattern like that across the arms. Or if you'd like, you could obviously get like really technological and use parts from like Iron Man designs and stuff like that, which is pretty cool too. You could add elements like this, like Red Guardian with a little bit of white into the design. I personally don't particularly care for that. You could do a predominantly black outfit, so something like this from Wasp, Nadia Pimp. Pim, sorry, not Pimp. That would be weird. But I would say that for me personally, I really like two designs predominantly. First of which is the one that I showed you here. This is my favorite. But if you'd like, you could go on ahead and obviously just recolor the entirety of the arms red. So that's another option for you, is that you could just make them all red. I just feel like it looks kind of boring and a little bit too much like Ketchup Man. So I think that this looks a bit better and it breaks up the flow of the design and works really, really well. So that's going to be the arm piece that we go with. Then, of course, capes, we're going to skip altogether. That is not something we're going to be interacting with because Deadpool does not wear a cape, although maybe he should, because that would be really cool. Then we get to the hip piece. As I mentioned before, the hips are actually really, really important because sometimes it's like, for example, if I were to pick that hip piece, it looks like it's not that important, but then when we zoom out, you realize like, oh wow, it really makes a big difference. Because if we were to go to the legs, let's skip to the legs forward just a little bit, and then we'll double back towards the hip piece to make my point. So for the leg piece, I really like the Adam Warlock option. I think that looks great because of course we use that on the arms and it works well, but there's an option that I actually like a bit better than even the Adam Warlock option. You could rock the Daredevil Noir new piece, which is terrific, and it looks really, really cool as well. And you could also use Forbush Man right here. I really like this design because I like having the red flow into the black instead of black into red, because I think that that looks a bit better. But you could obviously, if you're going for a darker motif for your costume, instead of bright red, you're going for kind of maroon, you could also rock the Inferno costume there. So there's several different really, really nice options. But you know what? Since the newest piece that has arrived, or one of the newest pieces in the game, is the Daredevil Noir piece, we're going to rock this one because I think it looks pretty cool. It kind of balances the idea of having the black and the red, and it gives us a really cool design kind of pattern going through the legs. So I think that that looks super duper neat. And then, of course, we still have to worry about the hips because, as you can see, they really do stand out like a sore thumb. It's like, we need to try to nail this down. So we have several options here. We could go with the black design because then we're kind of breaking it up from black to red to black to red, and that's really cool because it creates a uniformity in the pattern but also makes it look really, really, really cool and stylish. So that's definitely an option. If we want, we could always obviously try an option of just red or just black. That's usually what I go to just to kind of start with. And then I'm like, okay, well, I like a lot better when the hips are black like that than they are red, because you can see it when we add the red, it seems like there's a little bit too much red going, right? So the option of the black is really nice because it kind of breaks up the flow there. So I think that that looks pretty cool. So I think that's what we're going to lean towards, is the black hip piece. So we're going to look through different black hip pieces. I don't know why I'm having such a tough time saying that word right now, but we're going to scroll through and look to different options. Something like this is pretty good because it has a little bit of red in it as well. So that's a very, very good option. If we can find something else that has black and red, like for example, like something like that, looks very nice because it has the corners as red, so it works really, really well. So we're going to go on ahead and select that as our hip piece, and that of course wraps up the core appearance of our character. From there, we need to decide on weapons, which is really tough with Deadpool because he rocks so many different weapons. You could choose a gun, you could choose a sword, you could ideally choose both, but we can't. So we have to pick and choose here as to whether or not we go with the sword look or with the guns look. So I think I'm going to go with the swords for this particular design just because I feel like he's kind of more fancy and well known for the swords. So we're going to go with the double sword look. And then on the swords, of course, we do want to recolor them. Ideally, I would love to do something like dark like that, but it's a little bit too dark. So I like to go for the top right option gray because it's darker than the one that we see down here. but it's also not insanely dark like the black. So I think that that works pretty well as our go-to option there. So that looks very, very nice. Of course, I did double up on the swords, so we can have that over there as our go-to. Now, of course, in passive options, you have different things that you could do here. You don't have to follow a particular recipe here, because if you want your Deadpool character to have every appearance under the sun, then you do exactly that. You know, it's really up to you as to what you select in here. So that really depends on your own choosing. The tap ability, same thing goes, of course. Here, it's really, again, up to you what you want to do. Fighting is pretty important, I would imagine, for Deadpool. We could do a targeted lunge, because he's not particularly known for, like, firing beams out of his eyes or anything like that. So we're trying to keep the character accurate to his real persona, so to speak, or fictional persona. Stealth, I think, actually does work for the character, because sometimes he is stealthy. Not for a very long time, but he can be stealthy. And then you could give him a boomerang ability as well if you'd like to do that. As far as double tap is concerned, obviously we're going to stick to double jump, because he does not fly, nor does he web swing anywhere, even though he probably would love to be able to have that ability. And of course, with that in mind, we can then move on to the passive traits. So passive traits, of course, we could leave the heart red, since Deadpool's mostly red. Obviously have to give him invulnerability, because, well, that's sort of kind of his superpower. You could choose a specific voice that you'd like. For me, it really does not matter, because most of the time you'd barely hear your characters talk anyway, so it's perfectly fine to just keep it as it is. That targeter or target reticle works perfectly good for Deadpool. And with that in mind, ladies and gents, welcome Deadpool to your game. So with that in mind, we're going to go on ahead and actually teleport him out towards, let's go to Egypt, because usually I really like the way that the colors bounce and look on this particular terrain. And there's Deadpool. So we've done our recipe, and here he is, ready to disappear if so need be. And then, of course, Deadpool being as ridiculous as he is, he would probably ride a camel like this, because it's Deadpool. It's like, you know, Ghost Rider will show up on a cool motorcycle that's flaming and everything, and Deadpool will be like, I've got myself a brand new vehicle. It's a camel. And this should be a scene in Deadpool 2. If it isn't, Ryan Reynolds, if you're watching this, please add this as a scene, because I think this would be ridiculous enough to where we would all love to see it. With that in mind, ladies and gents, that wraps up the very first episode of LEGO Recipe. Today, we went ahead and cooked up a Deadpool custom. Let me know if you'd like to see maybe an X-Force Deadpool, or maybe some other variation of Deadpool in the future. In addition to that, the next recipe that we're going to be cooking up is actually going to be Thanos. So I hope that you guys will tune in to that. Let me know if you guys are excited about that. And of course, like always, don't forget, guys, hit that like button if you guys enjoyed today's video. I will hopefully catch you guys here next time. Peace out. See you laters, alligators. Bye-bye, everyone.